And we're live. Good to be back.
Yes, it is.
Pablo, let's talk about work ethic. Share the story about your dad working with pneumonia.
Yeah. So work ethic, what it was, and compare it to today, I guess. Right. Yeah, I remember my dad going to work with 103 degrees temperature. You know, and he had been diagnosed, walking pneumonia. He wasn't infectious. That was the most important thing to my dad. And for some reason, the doctor said, no, you're not infectious. But how can you not be infectious if you have 103 degrees? But, he called it up. He says, hey, I'm sick, but if you need this work to get done, I'm willing to come in. And he worked in a department that there were only two other guys, and the guys were fine with it. So he went in to work with 103 degrees temperature.
Wow.
And I remember that. Another thing that I remember was that, Sundays were our only day to go out. Sundays were like the day we would go to LA and visit some of the families over there, and they had kids, so I could play with them and this and that, and younger kids, right? And I remember many times we were dressed to walk out the door and the phone would ring. And my dad was a newspaper man. And so he had weird hours. He worked at night, but sometimes when the machines were not working properly, he had learned his trade in Cuba. So he was an engraver, and he had this ability to work with acids. And that was almost a lost art by the time we got to America. And, from the pressing of the documents and the papers, it's a lost art. It used to take a lot more. Now everything is digital and computerized and all the works. And so my dad would be amazed today if he could see some of that stuff. But in the old days, you had
What
to...
years are we talking, just to give context?
Okay, my dad he learned his trade early on in Cuba, so we're talking probably in the 50s.
Okay.
And you had to mess around with the lettering. They had to be perfect. They had this slide rulers and stuff like that they would measure them accurately. And I mean, you're talking about ancient times kind of thing, But he learned the trade, and he learned how to mix the acids or whatever it was that was there that needed, because now you can go on your computer and say, okay, I want bold lettering. Well, to get bold lettering back then, it was an art. Okay, so you get the idea. So there were only three guys that were able to do it. But those three guys saved the paper many a headaches. It was the Herald Examiner. It's no longer around. At any rate, the idea was that he would go to work when he wasn't feeling well. And on Sundays, when we were ready to go out and meet with the family, the phone would ring. And if it was his manager saying, his boss saying, hey, can you come in today? Sure. And my dad would leave my mom and me hanging and my aunt, and I hated it. I was a little kid. I was a kid. And so I remember a few times the phone rang and he left us hanging. So what I would do is get up in the morning and unhook it. It was my hack. And so I would unhook it from the back of the phone so that, they would see that it was still connected and all this stuff, right? But from the back of the phone, I would unhook it so there was no contact. And the phone wouldn't ring. And then I would have my Sundays with my family. But if, many a time. And there were a couple times when he was called. And his manager told him on Monday, hey, I called you yesterday to see if you could come in. And my dad said, oh, I didn't hear the phone. Yeah, it rang and rang and rang. Oh, we must have been out already. You must have cut us when we had left. So that was the way I was doing it, because, man, it was brutal. We were all dressed up and stuff. And
What do you think was it? Because it's work ethic.
Yes.
So he was always available
24/7.
24/7.
It didn't matter.
Was it also necessity? or it was just the way he was. Like, he didn't need to work those extra hours, but he had that amount of ethic that if he was called upon, he would show up.
Okay.
Looking back now, right?
Yeah. I would say a little bit of both, because when we got here, we didn't have anything. And so it was definitely necessity. And the way my dad got that job is that something happened with the front page, and his like a cousin or something was already working in the newspaper, and she said, I can get somebody to fix that. And then he was called in just out of the blue. He was looking for a job because he didn't like the job he had. He was working as a carpenter or something. And anyway, and so he went in and he fixed it, and they said, hey, you're looking for a job? Yeah, this and that, and whatever. Okay, why don't you come next week? And so the idea, I think, in my dad's mind was that he wanted to let everybody know that he would be available at all times, that he would be dependable, that they could count on him, that he would be there steadfast no matter what, even if the building was coming down. I mean, it was just one of those unbreakable kind of things. And I think that initially it was because of necessity. We needed to pay the rent. We needed to buy food, clothing for me, to go to school. Schooling was extremely important. So they had just placed me in a private school. And so anyway, I think that initially it was necessity. Later on, he didn't have to do it, but it was like inbred in his DNA. It was just, he felt that he was the provider for the family. My mom was not working. She was taking care of the family. And my uncle and aunt lived with us. When we came from Cuba, they decided to unite, so that the little money that we had would go a little further. And then we lived together forever, So initially it was necessity. Yeah. And then it was because it was the way he was, part of him. And he got all kinds of accolades and stuff like that at work. And he he loved what he did. And he loved going over there and meeting with people in the different departments. He loved learning how the art was expanding and developing. And it was just, he really enjoyed it. He took me a couple times to his job, and everybody loved him. I mean, and my dad was a person that always had a smile on his face, and nothing was ever a problem. He would always find a solution for something. So you want those kind of people around. I definitely do, And so I learned a lot from my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, it's, a work ethic that that is not common today, and there are some people that have it, because if we just say, oh, that doesn't exist anymore, there are some people that still are putting in those hours and are on call constantly. We know some of them.
Yeah, we know some of them.
Two people that I respect very much, but one in particular, I remember he shared with me that he got promoted to a manager type of position. Mm-hmm. And much better pay, much better benefits, all this stuff that came with it. And I said, wow, congrats, that's great. And he says, yeah, but it comes at a cost. So he was very clear that it meant he was always on call. If something went down on the weekend, he had to show up. Because you're talking about production facilities that never close, or run 24 hours a day, or 3 shifts, or whatever it is that they run, and 4 shifts. So he was very clear on it, but it's a work ethic that some people still have. But when you look at society and the newer, for whether it's us or somebody that we know that's hiring people, they have a hard time finding those people. And so what is it that, they're not paying them enough? Is it that the people have changed? The workforce has changed? I know some people that won't work unless it's remote. I know some people that, they're able to choose how they want to work now. So, what is it? Is it, what has happened in society that maybe you look at some of the work ethic has gone?
Well, before I talk about other people, let me tell you about me. And I know for a fact I would not go to work with 103 degrees temperature. Okay. I know for a fact I don't have that caliber of strength or fortitude to do something like that. Now, I own my own businesses. My dad didn't. So it's even a higher work ethic, because when you have your own business, I've gone to work sick, okay, where I don't, or when I don't feel good, but I've had things that need to come out on a timely manner, or I have got clients that are depending on me, and I have done it, but I would not go to work with 103 temperature, and if I had temperature, I probably wouldn't go to work. So I don't have that caliber of fortitude that my dad did. So there's a change already, okay? I think that I'm a hardworking individual, but I wouldn't go that far. So you see that change already, And yeah, I think that, the generations have evolved. We have a lot more things. I think we're more pampered. I think we're more spoiled. And we expect a lot more. Yeah. A lot more. That's why the other day we did a podcast and we're talking about retirement. And, well, we're talking about retirement here in the United States of America. But there are countries, I'm sure there's provinces in India or some Latin American countries that the retirement is not even in the vocabulary or in the dictionary. I mean, they're going to be working all their lives. So we are blessed. And sometimes I feel that we, instead of realizing our blessings, we're complaining. But the bottom line is that I think that, the work ethic has deteriorated. It's tough to get people on board. I would say, you can create an atmosphere of trust and, that we're all in this together. And that is usually my goal all the time. I remember reading in history that, for example, Napoleon and Alexander the Great, they would fight. They were the generals. They're the ones that gave orders. But they would fight with their soldiers in the front lines and, get hit and this and that. I think there was one particular war where a few soldiers got in front of Napoleon because he was potentially going to get killed. And they realized that the value that he brought to the troops, these people have a magnetic kind of fortitude. They're electrifying individuals that just by their presence, they instill power and strength into their troops, and yet they're fighting in the forefront.
Well, that's probably why.
That's
because
why.
they're in the trenches with them.
Right.
That's a leader you respect.
And I hope I'm not mistaken on this, but I think Cyrus the Great died in the front lines. And he was like tremendous figure in history. But yeah, it's a different, it's different. You lead by example.
Yeah.
And I think that provides the atmosphere, so that the entire office, the entire building can get behind you and move into, and you have to treat people with respect and acknowledge when they do things. And some people really like accolades. You know, hey, you
Oh,
did
yeah.
a great job here. You did this. It's extremely important for many people.
I absolutely. And I looked it up. Cyrus the Great, just Googled it. It says he was alleged to have died in battle
There you go.
while fighting the Masagetai, an ancient Eastern Iranian nomadic tribal confederation, 530 BC.
So I was right. So there's a few instances in history where these generals
Die in battle.
die in battle. And these are, I'm telling you, these are tremendous people. The fact that he died in battle is a big loss.
Jose Marti.
Jose Marti.
I remember our good friend Jorge, que en paz descanse, ¿verdad? He said that Jose Marti went into the battlefield against the Spanish. For this was the revolution against to Cuba to free themselves from Spain.
Right.
And that he went in and was killed, but he wasn't a fighter.
Right.
Yeah,
I remember George telling us. You know, and I remember reading, he was a poet. He was a thinker.
He was killed in battle against the Spanish troops, Jose Marti, at the Battle of Dos Rios near the confluence of the rivers on May 19th, 1895. But, and I don't know if I remember him saying that he went in on a white horse or something like that. I mean, he stood out.
He stood out.
Yeah, he was riding a white horse. You know, you can fact check this, but it says here he was shot by Spanish troops while riding a white horse. You know, he stood out a mile away. But he believed so much in the cause that he was through poetry, he was a revolutionary.
Right. But it's a big loss because he did more with his pen, his brains and the paper, than the sword. They say, you know, the pen is mightier than the sword. And he was killed right away, by the way, in that battle. He was killed right away. He was one of the first that got shot and killed, unfortunately. And so, however, he still lives today. How many people have died that nobody talks about him, unfortunately, right? Any death is bad. But these are people, like, see, the thing on Cyrus the Great stood out in my mind because I remember reading that and thinking, wow, what a loss. Because he united everybody. And he wasn't, well, that's another story. But we're talking about work ethic.
Add that to the list for another podcast.
Cyrus the Great. But I think it's definitely changed, you know?
You know.
And people poke at fun at the interviews. Like when you're interviewing, there's on Facebook an interview when the owner of the business is interviewing this lady, and the lady wants, she wants health insurance, she wants retirement, she wants 401k, she wants this, she wants days off, she wants to work, she wants, time off, and she wants, I mean,
wouldn't you say?
And they're poking fun at it, but hey, that satire is not too far from the truth.
Yeah,
sometimes.
No, it comes from. So
sometimes.
For those who are entrepreneurial spirits and have an excellent work ethic, doesn't it mean that they now have a greater opportunity because there's less competition? Because there's less people willing to put in those hours and sacrifice?
Well, yeah, I'd say so.
I would think so.
I would think so. Dana White thinks so. He came out saying, just be a beast. Because he's saying there's a lot of people around us that are a bunch of wuzzes. So just go out there and be a beast and destroy. Yeah. So Dana White thinks so.
I mean,
and he's an example of super hard work.
Absolutely.
What would he? He took $6,000 and turned them into $2 billion or something like that. It's ridiculous, you know. So
sweat equity.
Sweat equity.
So that's work ethic.
That's work ethic.
I was listening to. It was Dame Dash, the podcast I sent you, which was partners with Jay-Z on Rockefeller Records. Dame Dash went to go sell Jay-Z. You know, he was trying to promote Jay-Z to like 30 different record labels, he said, and nobody wanted him because of X or Y reason.
Right.
According to Dame Dash, right? There's always two sides.
Right.
But
he's probably right. He's probably
he went to take him to everybody. Nobody wanted him, so he says, "All right, we'll just do it ourselves," and that's how that was created.
That's
so
amazing.
You don't stop. He doesn't. The work ethic that man has and must have had then. I think he was 19 years old or something like that.
Can you imagine?
But
that strength of character. See, nothing was going to stop him.
Right. See, I think that, we're getting into work ethic, but also failure and objections and no's, rejection. I think that a lot of people stop, and I know it's different than work ethic, but I think a lot of people stop at the rejection because it's painful. But somebody like that, and Dame Dash, going back to him, he lost his mom at 16 years old, unfortunately. And he says that once that he faced that loss of his mother, nothing else was important.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if they turned him down. It didn't matter if they rejected him, if he talked bad about him. No matter what happened to him, because of the tragedy he had already faced. So it put things in perspective. He's like, you guys are losing sleep over these little things.
Petty
things. So you develop like a thick skin. And I think it goes hand in hand with work ethic. Because if you have the ability to handle rejection and objections and have a strong work ethic, which to me, work ethic just means you show up every day, you're consistent, you're reliable. You'll do what maybe others won't to be there.
Correct.
You're working whether someone's looking or not. I remember this concept that was introduced to me, and I don't remember if it was by Grant Cardone or somebody I was listening to, where he said, you can fool anyone, but you can't fool yourself. You can fool everyone to think that you're working extremely hard. But what are you actually doing when no one's looking?
Yeah. Well, there's a podcast or a presentation by Patrick Bet-David that he talks about the man in the mirror, just like Michael Jackson's song.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you can fool many people around you, but you can't fool the man in the mirror. And I remember him talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's powerful.
It's powerful because someone's always looking, first off.
Sure.
But more importantly is you're lying to yourself.
Of course.
If you're lying to yourself, then what kind of character, do you have? And so if you can...
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, if you can be truthful to yourself, and at the end of the day, you take your shoes off, you jump in bed, you whatever, and you say it was a good day, a full day's work. I gave it my fullest. I was productive, or I did what I wanted to accomplish. Or do you just jump in bed and you feel that maybe you made people think you were working, but in reality you weren't. And I think that one of the things is actually having some sort of measurement and accountability to what is productivity. That goes slightly different than work ethic, but you could think that were productive in that day, but were you really productive? And what is
Correct,
your form?
yes.
What is your form of measurement?
Right.
To productivity?
That's one of the things that I'm weak in, very weak actually. Measuring progress or measuring things. I went in there like a workhorse and just banged away at it. And I'm not sure that that's the best thing. I've seen people that measure outputs and they're able to, effect the changes that need to be done to a corporation or a business, faster and therefore more productively.
Yes.
And I did do that, but I did it rudimentary, not to the extent that, some of these businesses measure the outflow, the workflow, and I think it's a good thing. If you get too much into it, though,
Well, you look at people like Jocko Willink, you
Uh-huh.
know, he's measuring you're looking at Dan Pena, he's measuring every minute, every hour, every 30
See, I'm
minutes.
weak in that area.
Oh, me too.
I'm weak in that
I
area.
will say that when I began to measure in my business, my production and my um, uh, income, but more so activities that were producing income, my business did grow
Correct.
Drastically when I began to measure. And it went down to measuring. First, I was measuring the years, and every year I would measure, oh, how'd I do year after year? But that wasn't close enough. Then I began to measure months. Then I began to measure weeks, and then I got it down to days.
See,
Now,
I'm very weak in that aspect.
but
I remember one time I was devoting a lot. I was selling insurance through my insurance business. My real estate business had not taken off yet. So I was doing the insurance business. And I remember devoting a lot of time to law firms and attorneys.
yeah,
And then I remember reviewing a 3-month production list. And most of my business was coming from, at that time, realtors. And I was devoting 10% of my time to realtors, 60% of my time to law firms, and the realtor business was like 90% compared to 20% of the law firms. So I switched it, and I devoted 10% of my time to attorneys
mm-hmm.
and 60% of my time to the realtor area and the finance and mortgage and all that. And my business tripled.
Just a simple switch.
Just a simple switch. It tripled. And it didn't triple in 3 years. It tripled like the very next month.
Wow.
Okay? So I did do that. But I am weak. See, one of the things that one is supposed to know is what areas are you weak in? You're strong in some things. You're weak in others. Get help in the areas that you're weak in.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah.
First is awareness that you're weak in it.
There you go.
That's what you're bringing up. And I think it's great that you say I can improve on that.
I can improve on everything.
Well,
and a lot of stuff.
But I think it goes hand in hand with work ethic. And I think that so maybe we can wrap it up here because we're starting to get the gardeners coming close. But what could people improve? What could people do to improve their work ethic?
I think it's a mental commitment. I think that you need to determine what you want to do with your life and where do you want to take your business and just listen, showing up every day, like you said, show up every day, and that's half the battle won. Joe Rogan says that. So be dependable, be reliable to yourself. Make a promise to yourself that this is what you're going to do. If you're, and if you're running your own business, you have no choice. If you're running your own business, you absolutely have no choice.
You have to show up.
You have to show up.
I think that if you're running your own business, it's a true test to your work ethic. Because if you don't produce, you don't do the activities needed to generate income, you don't survive.
Yeah. There is something that Patrick David says, which is very interesting. He says, look, you don't have to own your own business. You can be a great number 2 person.
Right.
Or a great number 3 person.
Correct.
And Patrick says that sometimes when that number 2 person tries to be the boss and own their own business, they don't do as well.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong if not having your own business,
right.
If you're a great number 2 person or a great number 3 person. And even further down the line, if you're just working for a company, but you're doing the best job possible, somebody's going to notice. You do the best job possible, and you're going to have a better shot of getting a raise, moving up. So, it's just a personal commitment.
Right. Because, again, someone's always watching. And if you're the type of person that clocks out at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. every single day, even though if there's an urgent matter that maybe needed more attention, nope, you clock out that time every day, then if something goes down, whoever, the manager, the boss, everybody knows you're not going to be there after this time, no matter what. And so I think that the way to grow, and I've heard this said in different places, is you work as if you were, let's say, making a much higher income, so that you one day make that much higher income, because you're showing the signs of there.
Yeah, it's very good. I like that.
Some people will say, oh, well, you're working for free then, or, a boss will take advantage of that, or whatever the case. Somebody will spot you. It's like we'll go to a restaurant or any place, and when someone is good energy, like we went to a Shogun type of thing, Benihana or Shogun, and the chef, they had it's Korean, Japanese,
I think it's Japanese.
Grill, barbecue. Yeah. And he's super excited and he's making jokes, the guy on the grill. And then we find out later he's got a side business where he's barbecuing and making a ton of money on the side. And this is something he's also doing.
Well, it's because of his attitude.
I remember
hired. The guy you were talking about, and he was super cool.
I'm sure somebody says, hey, can you do on a weekend? Yeah, So that's the cool thing, is that someone's always watching.
Someone's always watching. Now, there are bosses that will take advantage.
Absolutely.
Because there's people in every stretch of life, but it's short-lived.
Correct.
You
can't do that forever. I remember being in a position where the person above me, the boss, was basically had their hand on my shoulder, not letting me grow within that company. And so some people have the option to leave. I think most people can figure out a way to leave. And so I just decided this isn't a place to grow, and I left. You can't hold people down forever. If they have a spirit of growth,
correct,
they will find a way to get out of there. And we can wrap it up with that if you like.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Hopefully the gardeners didn't make too much noise.
Let's see what happens. Thank you.